join us on the podium here? How you doing, Stephen? So thanks everyone for joining us. My name is Councilor Joe Driscoll. I'm the Airport and Transportation Chair. With us today we have Councilors at Large Stephen Thompson, Tim Rudd, and Khalid Bey, and the 4th District Councilor Latoya Allen. And joining us, Trent, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Trent Ammond, the Chief Financial Officer at the airport, representing the airport today.
Great.
So,
great, thank you for coming in. So why don't you start by giving us an overview of, I guess, the airport in general and how the last year's been, and what you think the council needs to be made aware of.
Sure. First, I'd like to start by offering apologies from our interim executive director, John Carney. He wanted to be here today but was taken ill and couldn't make it, so he sends his regards. We've had a very good year at the airport. One of the biggest things, we finished up our terminal improvement project. So if those of you who have had a chance to be at the airport within the past 3 or 4 months have seen the results of that, made significant improvements throughout the public side of the terminal building. And now it kind of matches the post-security side, which was renovated 5 or 6 years ago in another large project. We've added several destinations, so our air service development efforts have paid off. We now are up to 24 destinations, direct flights from Syracuse, and our passenger traffic has increased about 12% the calendar year 2018 over 2017. So most of the increase is probably due to the new flights that have been added. Those are primarily in the leisure market. Allegiant, which was previously a carrier at the airport, has added some new destinations, and Frontier Airlines, another ultra low-cost carrier, has come in to begin service at Syracuse, and they started with several destinations on a seasonal basis as well. So those things are both going very well. We've also brought our airport advertising program in-house. We used to contract that out, but now it's taken over by one of our staff members and has gotten off to a very good start. We've pretty much already in the first quarter of this year exceeded our previous annual amount of revenue from advertising. So those are a couple of the highlights. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the airport in general if you'd like, or the budget numbers. Just as background, the city budget numbers are a small portion of the overall airport budget. They primarily represent the wages and salaries and benefits of the city employees who still work at the airport, as well as the City Fire Station number 4, our airport rescue and firefighting station. So those are probably the biggest components of the operating part of the budget. There's also a significant component of debt service. The airport authority is still reimbursing the city for debt that was issued on that previous post-security renovation project that took place 6 or 7 years ago. Okay. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Great. Councilors, anyone want to jump in? Joining us as well as 1st District Councilor Joe Carney.
Yeah, a couple questions. First, and actually both are along personnel. There's a handful of positions that we've been left empty, like airport maintenance crew leader, airport custodial crew leader, airport operations worker. It's like 18 positions that are just empty and it seems aren't filled. Are those going to be filled?
Those positions, I believe, were actually transferred to the airport authority in a prior year. Okay. Both the operations workers and the crew leaders, custodial and maintenance. So they're empty on the city side of the budget, but they were picked up on the airport authority budget.
Okay. And along those lines, do we have an idea of when we'll have, I mean, what's the plan with moving over the rest of the employees? Do we have a, couple-year plan, 5-year plan? Like what's the goal here? Will we see all of these city employees finally transferred over to the authority, or is this something that we plan on having for some time to come.
It is our goal to see all of those employees transferred over to the authority. We are currently engaged in negotiations with Local 400, which would, if we're successful in reaching an agreement, that would account for, I think, maybe about 60 of the remaining city employees coming over to the authority. And after that, I think the unions, the CSEA and the trades unions would be hopefully the next unions that we would engage in collective bargaining with, again, with the goal to have all the employees transferred over to the authority. I can't give you a specific time frame because it does depend on the negotiations.
Okay.
So.
Anything, Councilor Thompson or Councilor Bay?
Trent, is there anything that is reimbursed now, as has been in the past, reimbursable from the city to the airport or the airport to the city?
Yes, all the salaries and benefits of the city employees who work at the airport are all reimbursed from the authority to the city. So their paychecks come from the city, but the authority reimburses that amount. The debt service as well, it gets reimbursed. And then there's another line which is referred to as city services. So that is money that is reimbursed from the authority to the city, and it's based on an independent audit of, I guess I call it activity that the city engages in that for the benefit of the airport. So if the budget department works on a portion of the airport budget, then a little bit of the budget department's cost might be reimbursed by the airport, and similarly for other city departments. So.
Okay. Mary, where does this reflect that this comes back into the city budget? On the revenue portion? Okay. Okay, but this would reflect that more than $1.2 million came.
Yes.
Maximus does an audit every year of all city departments of what they do for the airport, and then
That portion of it,
yeah,
Yes.
So the authority pays the city. It's $1.2 million for next
for
year.
that portion. It doesn't pay the salaries and the,
Yes, we also
Yes, they also pay the salaries.
of the employees who work directly at the airport. We pay
so
those
this
salaries.
is, but this is, in our book, it shows that this money is going out, correct?
Right, because it's city employees. So there's the revenue portion of that on the aviation where it shows there's a line item that says city. I can get back to my book and show you the page number.
But then it comes back in somewhere?
Yeah,
it's
it all
reimbursed.
nets out to zero.
Yeah,
For the
okay, that's what I'm
aviation-
asking.
for
Where
the
does it show-
aviation
Where does
fund.
it show zero?
Well, yeah, there's a line, I don't know, sorry, I don't know if you're looking at the same thing I am, but there's a line called airport reimbursement dash operating.
Expenditure portion, is that
That's
it?
7.1 million approximately.
Okay.
That number, that 7.1 includes the 1.2. So when we reimburse that 7.1, that's where that 1.2 is coming back to the city.
Okay.
You good, Councilor?
Yep.
You, Councilor Bay?
Thank you. Hey, Trent, how you doing?
Good morning. Good, thanks.
Just one question where I'm mixing some parts, so they may or may not go together. But I know you can figure this out. So there's an increase in passenger carrier weight, which obviously is positive. I see there's though an in-plane freight decrease, and it outpaces passenger weight by about 480,000. We're talking about weight, and I'm wondering, how does that translate? Like, does it have any negative impact when the freight weight has decreased by so much? In-plane freight.
Well, I don't think so. First off, I say I'm not familiar with those numbers that you're
Oh,
looking at
okay.
right now.
Sorry about that.
But that's okay, because our revenue is not based on the amount of freight.
Right.
It's based on the number of landings. So I guess if each cargo plane is carrying a little bit less, it's not going to affect our revenue because we're going to get the same landing fees. If it actually represents a reduction in the number of cargo flights, which may not be as likely, then it could represent a reduction in landing fees. But
Yeah.
the way the revenue is structured, our airfield is kind of a zero-sum endeavor, because whatever expenses it takes to keep the airfield operational gets spread to all the carriers that are using the airfield. So at the end of the year, we actually do a reconciliation and look at what it actually cost us, and then go back and adjust the rates that the carriers pay for landing fees to zero that out. So if we have had a little bit less activity and during the year collected less fees, if we need more money to zero the balance, we adjust, the fees are adjusted. And that's all part of the agreement that we have with the airlines.
Yeah, because I was wondering if the weight, I would think that obviously the weight decreased. I mean, that there were less landings to some degree. And the part that I wasn't sure if it mixed together. I know that you guys have, you know, I don't know how you do it. The rest of us need to figure out how to do it. You have a decrease in overall salary and going into 20, and a decrease in overtime. And I was wondering if somehow they were impacted. You know, if somehow the decrease in freight fees collected was in some way balanced out, or if the decrease in salaries and overtime made it so it balanced out. Does that make sense?
I think I understand the question, and if I do, then no, there's no relationship between the change in freight and the change in salaries and benefits. But again, I'm not looking at those numbers, and Mary, I'm not sure where that's coming from, because that's not part of what we received. Okay, yeah. So
Yeah. It's talking about freight weight and the decrease in freight rate, which I was saying seems like it would translate to a decrease in landings, which would decrease fees or revenue. And I was wondering how significant that was, if at all.
it's not going to be significant. No. So,
all right, appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Bay. Councilor Rudd, anything you'd like to ask?
Across different departments, I've expressed the exasperation with the activity indicators, so this just highlights that again for me, because we get this budget book with activity indicators that are not really collaboratively identified with the department, and then result in us thinking we're looking at indicators of performance that are often separate of what departments actually define as their performance. So whatever has to happen citywide, including the aviation fund and other funds, we need to have a way to connect the activity indicators in the budget to actual performance, hopefully to regular management over time. To the extent you already do that, I think we should adjust the activity indicators to reflect how you actually judge the airport's performance, so that when we get these couple sheets, we can actually understand and be on the same page. So I would just flag that as something that we could do. And then on the 1.2 million, I'm a little confused on how that works. So I can see on page 238 of what we have. Do you have that? No?
I have no idea, Councilor.
Okay, so this can be a question for you and I guess Mary as the budget director. But so we show the city provided services of 1.2 million. And there's a separate line for the city provided services of fire, which is 2.2 million. And I totally get the fire. We staff a fire department at the airport in case anything happens. That makes sense. And then the 1.2 million is the thing that Councilor Carney was questioning about the long-term planning. But then I got confused. No?
3,000,007.
Can you use the mic so that we continue to?
If you take that page, you're looking at 3,007,35,188 is the employees that we currently pay at the airport. Then you go down, the 1,000,002 is reimbursement for city hall employees, city staff to help the airport. And the next line is the lumber for fire. It adds up to 7,146,000. So for 3 million in the upper column is the employees that Councilor Carney was asking about. 1.2 is city support staff, City of Syracuse, fire department.
So the aviation department itself is generating all 7.1 million, and then a portion of it's paying for city firefighters and other city employees, and then there's ones who are just aviation employees.
Yes.
Is that inaccurate? So you're like the airport's generating 7.1 million in revenue from its fees and all this other stuff somehow, and then
Yeah, I mean, that is,
yeah. I'm
That is-
just
that
making
is
sure I
one-
understand it.
that is a portion. I mean, the airport generates more revenue than that, but it
Right.
uses some of it, the revenue it generates, to pay for the services of both the employees who work directly at the airport, that's the 3.7 million, and services provided by other city employees on airport-related matters. And that number, the 1.2 million, will continue to decrease as the airport authority.
Oh, I see.
relies
So
less
over
on city
time, you'll
services.
reimburse us for less because we'll have fewer city staff working on it, and you'll have them transferred. But for the moment, you're using our staff until you I understand. I think.
Well, yeah, yes. I mean, you're correct. There is a slight distinction. There are both staff, as in staff who work at the airport and are transferred from the city payroll to the airport authority payroll, but then there are additional services. So, for instance, when the airport first transitioned from being operated by the city to the authority, we were heavily dependent upon a lot of city services, processing accounts payable checks, things like that. We have taken over a lot of those responsibilities ourselves at the authority so that we rely less on city, I'll call them support services performed by other city employees, and that's why the 1.2 million number will continue to decrease. Another example, the law department. I mean, this law department for the city used to do a lot of work for the authority when they were together, but now we use our own independent counsel. So over the next few years, you should see both of those numbers decrease.
I see.
Are the police are paid out of which line?
The police do not show at all on the city budget because the Syracuse police officers who are working at the airport are working there under secondary employment and are contracted through Securitas, our security vendor.
Okay.
So those payments are made by the authority to the vendor.
To the vendor, even though they're in the Syracuse police vehicles.
Well, those are actually Syracuse Regional Airport Authority vehicles that have been equipped to Syracuse police standards per the request of the prior chief so that they can be utilized when the officers are working at the airport.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else?
John, did you have a point to make? No. Okay.
Okay, so I had a few questions. When you talk about the additions, particularly like Frontier, what destinations have been added?
I think Frontier serves Denver and Raleigh-Durham, and I think a couple Florida destinations.
Okay, great. And what was the other company that was more?
Allegiant added some additional service to Florida. And our most recent announcement is that United will be adding daily service to Denver beginning in June.
Okay.
And that's a market that we have been focused on for several years, trying to, essentially get direct service further to the west. And Denver, it's a great place because it is a hub for Frontier and I think United as well. So that will open up a lot of destinations for passengers who want to continue to the West Coast and other destinations in the central part of the country.
Okay. And when you spoke about the success of moving promotion to in-house, you said there's been an increase. How do you measure that increase in the success of promotion?
That's a dollar value because we know what we were getting in terms of revenue from the company that we contracted the advertising out to before, and we know how much revenue we're generating from the contracts that we are now issuing ourselves.
So it's not so much promoting it's bringing sponsors in or
yeah, essentially
advertising
advertisers.
dollars in.
Yes, exactly.
I
yes.
misunderstood. Okay.
Oh, sorry. So yes, but that is a straight dollar comparison that shows that increase. Yeah.
Okay, great. And I was just curious, are pensions covered and fringe benefits, are they covered in salaries as well?
They're in the benefits category, yes. So,
okay.
but yes, those are, the airport authority reimburses the city for pension expense related to the city employees who are working at the airport. So that's one of the reimbursements, yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions? All right, thank you very much for coming in. We appreciate it, and